Right. Welcome to another episode of Marine Biodiversity Networking Fridays. My name is Ana Carolina Peralta. I am a marine biologist currently based in Florida, USA, working as a research associate for the Institute for Marine and Remote Sensing at the University of South Florida. And it's a big pleasure for me to moderate this session today. Right, so we will be talking today, we'll have a very special session. We will talk about the digital twins of the ocean BioFlow project, integrating marine biodiversity data into a digital representation of the ocean ecosystem and ecology. So, in this special session, we will have Dr. Klaas Deneudt, Matthias Obst, and Leen Vandepitte. As a small background for this discussion, I would like to point out that the ocean and its biodiversity are essential to life on this planet, and comprehensive data on biodiversity and related human and environmental pressures are crucial to understanding its current state and how this may change. Despite of a big number of actors collecting biodiversity data and the development of novel cost-effective monitoring technologies, much data is inaccessible and unusable. So the digital twin of the ocean BioFlow project, it's looking for the integration of the biodiversity monitoring data into a digital twin, in a digital representation of the ocean. And this will activate access to sleeping marine biodiversity data and will enable a sustainable integration of the existing new artificial intelligence processed and automated data flow from various sources to generate a digital replication digital replica of a marine biological process. And also to transform new and current data flow into evidence-based knowledge, supporting the development of policy relevant tools and services for effective monitoring, restoration, and protection of marine biodiversity. So let's begin with our speakers, that they will explain better and in a more interesting way about what I am introducing now. So our first speaker is going to be Klaas Deneudt from Marine Observation Center, the Flanders Marine Institute. He's going to introduce the digital twin of the ocean BioFlow project. He's going to share with us the general objectives, the consortium, and a work plan for this project. But before that, I'm going to give a small bio or introduction about his background. So he's head of the Marine Observation Center at Flanders Marine Institute and coordinator of the LifeWatch Belgium National Distributed Center. The Marine Observation Center is a young and dynamic center that performs essential and long-term multidisciplinary observations in the marine environment in order to improve the understanding of the dynamics and ecosystem functioning of marine and coastal ecosystems. Marine Observation Center participates in key European projects in the marine biodiversity domain, such as Marco Polo, Aneris, Straits, and others. Klaas is a marine biologist with more than 20 years of experience in marine biodiversity observation and related data management in a European context. Klaas is a member of the EuroGoose Biological Observation Working Group and a member of the European Marine Omics Biodiversity Observation Network Operational Committee, former chair of the European Marine Biological Research Center E-Infrastructure Working Group, former member of the group of data experts of the Research Data Alliance, and former member of the IODE Working Group on Chemical and Biological Data. Klaas coordinates the DTO-BioFlow project and that aims to integrate marine biodiversity data into the European Digital Twin initiatives. So welcome, Klaas, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for that very nice introduction. And thanks also for allowing me to give this talk on the DTO-BioFlow project. So I will try to introduce to you a bit what the project is about. We only recently started. We started the project in September of this year. So a lot of what you will hear is still in the planning or in the preparation phase. But I hope it will be useful to you anyhow. So before I start, I also need to mention my colleague Carlota Muniz, who is the scientific coordinator of this work and who is vital to making this project happen. Okay, let's get started. First, a bit about the context of this project. Well, European Commission has set an ambitious goal for itself to build a digital twin of the ocean in order to support the Mission Ocean initiative. The Mission Ocean initiative is a mission to restore our oceans and waters by 2030. And this digital twin should be of instrumental support to this goal. So what will be this digital twin of the ocean? Well, it is supposed to be a digital space and a digital environment that provides access to vast amounts of data, different models, AI neural networks, and other tools, and it should support better decision making. So basically, it should allow better understanding of the ocean. It should allow simulations and predictions of different scenarios, and it should, in general, support better informed decision making. So EU is rapidly moving forward with the construction of this digital twin of the ocean. There's various ongoing activities to build this DTO, and one of them is the EDITO project, which is a collaboration by Mercator Ocean and Flanders Marine Institute. And in this project, the underlying infrastructure for this DTO is being built. So there's important components being developed in that project, among which the data lake and also the DTO engine that should support the DTO. Now, in May last year, 2022, the EU opened a call to bring biodiversity data, biodiversity monitoring data into this digital twin of the ocean. The general aims presented were to expand the collection of marine biodiversity data, to make the data available in the digital twin of the ocean, and also to support the development of tools for a better assessment of human activities on marine biodiversity. So in response to this call, we have built a consortium with partners from 12 countries to submit a plan to make this happen. So we were successful in receiving the grant, the EU grant, and we called the project the DTO-BioFlow project, dealing with the integration of biodiversity monitoring data into the DTO. The main objective of this project is to unlock sleeping biodiversity data and to build sustainable flows of biodiversity monitoring data towards the EU digital twin of the ocean. Maybe to clarify, with sleeping data, we mean data that is currently not being made available. So there's different reasons why certain data is not available at the moment. It can be for cultural reasons, because people currently do not see the benefit of sharing the data. It can be for legal reasons. Data is not available, but it can also be for technical reasons. There's a lot of new types of biodiversity monitoring data out there being collected with new types of sensors, new techniques, acoustic techniques, imaging techniques, DNA-based observations, and so on. And many of those data are not finding their way to the large European and global data repositories because of technical reasons. So we have a 42-month project and 10 million euro grant to work on that, on those challenges. We also have a 1 million euros for financial support to third parties. We'll tell you more about that later. And the project will run from September 2023 to February 2027. We have a very nice consortium with 32 participants. 28 beneficiaries, 2 affiliated institutes, and 2 associated partners from the UK. We have many very excellent scientific institutions on board, but also several important service providers and European research infrastructures. We also have some international and intergovernmental organizations on board. So all in all, a good consortium to make this happen. Now, what are the specific objectives in the project? Well, we want to increase the flow of relevant biodiversity data. And we want to do that by assessing the opportunities and unlocking current barriers to the assimilation of data and the ingestion of data. We want to develop and integrate the biodiversity digital component of the EU DTO by setting up sustainable data flows that can last also beyond the duration of this project. And we want to demonstrate an end-to-end approach for biodiversity monitoring based on the digital environment provided by the EU DTO. And finally, we want to establish mechanisms to monitor and measure progress and community action towards increasing the biodiversity data flows into the DTO by 2030. So these are our general objectives. How are we going to work on this? Well, we will start with identifying missing data, and we will set up agreements with existing data holders and organize open calls to data holders. We will work closely with the monitoring networks. There will also be some test casing going on for doing cost-effective monitoring. And we will set up data flows towards primary data type specific data integrators, but also to secondary data integrators like Eurobis and EMODnet. And with the networks, we will build science-based data compilations and products. And those products will be made available in the DTO and made accessible for the demonstration cases to support policy making. So we will do that, and in the meantime, we will take on all user and stakeholder feedback to improve this approach. And we will also work towards community engagement and outreach throughout the project. We have organized this approach into 6 work packages in the project. Work package 1 is on project management and coordination. Work package 2 is on increasing the flow of relevant biodiversity data. Work package 3 deals with enabling sustained flows of biodiversity monitoring data into the DTO. Work package 4 is to demonstrate an end-to-end approach with policy-relevant use cases. Work package 5 is the technical work package. It will deliver the integration into the DTO infrastructure. And work package 6 will deal with communication, dissemination, exploitation, and impact of the project. So as part of the project in work package 4, we will have a number of policy relevant demonstrator use cases, or DUCs as we call them. I will not say too much about this because you will get more information in the next presentation in this session by our colleague Matthias, who is in charge of leading these activities. But I can say that these demonstration use cases, they are tackling different policy-related challenges, going from invasive species management over spatial planning to low impact fisheries. So finally, what do we consider will be the main outcomes of this project? Well, we will make European and global marine biodiversity observation and monitoring more targeted and more cost-effective. We will integrate biodiversity data and information into the EU DTO. We will build fit-for-purpose digital tools and services to support policymaking. And we will generate enhanced knowledge of marine biodiversity and its state, its pressures, to support evidence-based policymaking. We will create new data flows also. We will create user-target demonstrator use cases and generate new knowledge. And we will deliver a strategic foresight report for increasing the biodiversity data flows into the DTO by 2030. Finally, and this is my last slide already, I want to mention that we are organizing calls with financial support for marine biodiversity data holders. This is one of the ways we want to get more biodiversity data available for the DTO. And our colleague Leen Vandepitte will tell you more about this in her presentation later in this session. And you will hear more about how this is organized and what the criteria of this call. So I hope that was clear and that you already have a better idea of the plans we have with the DTO-BioFlow project. Please note that if you want to learn more, you can always check our website at DTO-BioFlow.eu or contact us at info@DTO-BioFlow.eu. You can also subscribe to one of our social media channels on LinkedIn or X, and it will help you to stay aware of the ongoing activities. Okay, with that, I want to thank you all for listening, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much, Klaas, for such an interesting presentation. This is a very novel topic, and let's see, the audience have some questions. We have some time for maybe 2 questions. So please, here we have one in the chat. what it's Luliana, sorry if I pronounce bad your name. So Luliana Nikerus is asking, what type of stakeholders do you want to involve?
Okay. So we have it's a good question. We have quite some activities in the project to connect to various kinds of stakeholders. One of the more important group of stakeholders is the biodiversity observation community. So we want to make sure that they have that they get the tools and the services and the infrastructure to make their data available and to make it ready for analysis. So this is one of the goals of the digital twin of the ocean. It is not only targeting policymakers, it is also targeting scientists who should be able to work more efficient with existing data and do the modeling in a performance, do their modeling in a performant environment with a lot of supporting data available in this DTO. So at the same time, we reach out to many different stakeholders from not only from science or from policy, but also in industry, who are also collecting a lot of data, who also have an interest in making assessments of the environment and the impact that they potentially have on the environment with their activities. So it will be a broad set of stakeholders we will collaborate with and reach out to. And a lot of that will happen in work package 6, where different campaigns are set up for reaching out and connecting to these stakeholders. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Klaas. I'm having few participants asking basically the same question, and is related to the call you're mentioning. So yeah, for example, Frank Mueller-Carger is asking, is the project focused on European data holders or it's global, international? And how can the network, like, for example, MBON, help to your process? And yeah, people are interested to know if outside the European area it is possible to apply for this call.
Mm-hmm. I will not say too much about the call because Lynn still has to give her presentation and will go more in detail there. But we've specified in the call that data for a substantial part should be collected in European waters, as this is an EU grant, of course. That being said, there's a list of countries, of eligible countries eligible countries for participation in Horizon Europe, in the Horizon Europe program, and this is not restricted to European countries. So if there is a clear part of the data that focuses on European marine waters, it could be, this initiative could be open to people from outside of Europe as well. And I guess this could be organized through global observation networks. Referring to M1, for example, we are already in contact with the M1 Europe initiative, and we will stimulate applications from that side.
Thank you, Klaas. As you mentioned, Lynn will maybe expand a little bit on that. And for the rest of the questions, we can manage at the end of the session. We will have a special section to continue the discussion. So I'm going to move forward and present our next speaker. Our next speaker is Matthias Obst from the Department of Marine Science, University of Gothenburg, Sweden. He's going to talk about the DTO-BioFlow building demonstrator use cases, connecting monitoring networks, new data streams, analytical resources, and societal applications. Matthias is an expert in systematics, benthic ecology, and conservation biology. He is chair of the Swedish node of the European Marine Biological Research Center and Consortium chair of the Swedish Biodiversity Data Infrastructure. In his research, Matthias established harmonized and automated observation systems for biological diversity in the sea, spanning from genetic sensors to citizen observatories. He also develops methods and infrastructure to capture and integrate such data to enable interdisciplinary research for the protection and management of biological resources in the ocean. These resources are now integrated into the digital twin of the ocean under the DTO-BioFlow project. Matthias co-leads the working package 4 that was mentioned or pointed out by Klaas, which implement the use of end-to-end use cases and links monitoring networks, information and communication technology infrastructure, and end users applications. So welcome, Matthias. The floor is yours.
Okay, I take it from here, Anna. Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. So you said already a lot of things. So I see if I can, I hope I can live up to all the things you mentioned here. And yes, I continue with Klaas' presentations on the data flows and the demonstrator use cases. And it's not only me working on this work package in the DTO-BioFlow project, it's also Christina who helped us from LifeWatch, from the LifeWatch Eric. So we are doing this together. Now, to start continuing where Klaas stopped, this is like kind of a major, like a mock-up picture of how we envisage that the DTO-BioFlow project is coming together and how all these activities are linked. So we have monitoring networks. They are all part of the consortium, but there are more monitoring networks out there. So we want to create achieve some sort of consistency in the monitoring that is done there, and then kind of channel the data streams into the appropriate repositories for these different data types. And the focus here is on the new promising data types that Klaas already mentioned. They are technology driven, and they are a kind of new generations of how to monitor the biodiversity in the ocean. And then these should be used in different cases, these use cases, hopefully societal applications. So not only showing that that's like scientifically interesting, but out there in society, they have to be having some value and interest to be used in combination, preferably. So, and there has to be for all of this, we want to have an infrastructure that is then called a DTO. So Klaas already mentioned these use cases. I'm not going into the detail other than at the end, maybe I can name 2 examples, but in general, what we're doing with these use cases is we are defining now a set of important criteria to make sure that we're achieving this integration across all these different fields. And these criteria, the way we have carved them out so far is that number one is that it should reach way beyond the proof of concept, because many of these methods, they have been now tested for proof of concept for the last 15 years, and they do work. But what doesn't work just yet is to implement them on a broader scale and make the data available and data products available to many end users. So this is what we're trying to achieve here with the use cases. They should stimulate that development. And then there has to be a very strong element of co-creation. So we do want end users to be a part, preferably already at the design phase. We want to achieve this end-to-end connection. So we don't know if that's possible, but it's certainly an ambition that we have, like at the point that the use case should tie together the activity all the way from the point that the data are collected by some sort of monitoring network to the data streams, to the data products, to the scientific analysis of the data, and then the applications in society. And then there has to be also a very strong element of an added value. So there's something that people cannot do today. And that is really important. If we building this infrastructure now, then there has to be a motivation and incentive that end users will want to maintain it after the project has finished. So for the sustainability, it's really important that we're showing this added value. And also, we really see the need of the support. So in a way, we are trying to glue a lot of existing activities in the ocean together. There are the monitoring networks. There are many EU projects. They're doing something along the same lines. They're working in the same spirit, and there are infrastructures, research infrastructures out there. And all of these, we want to use the use cases to tie them together in a common activity. So here you see like the data streams that we are focusing on with highest priority: genomics, plankton imaging, biologging, passive acoustics, and then we have one bin for anything else that is interesting. And there we keep a little bit of flexibility if something shows up that we have missed, that we think is really important, and we should be able to be opportunistic and make use of other data sources. So we have a lot of experts in the network, and we have a lot of infrastructure in the network that does already the genomics and the plankton monitoring part. There is a lot of systems out there that are already used, off-the-shelf solution, so to say. And the same goes for biologging and passive acoustics. So this is where we start. We're not starting from scratch. And where we are now at the moment is we 2 months in the project. We are now kind of making inventory of the maturity of these methods. So here you see an example, the passive acoustic one. That is very well established in Belgium, for example, where it's used to track cetaceans, and you can not only see who's there in terms of like the large mammals, but also what they're doing, how they're behaving. So that's a lot of information you can use for connectivity studies. So in this case, you see the data pipelines, they are already there, they are established. So there's an element of data collection, there's an element of data management that you see up here, and then there is a networking. So there is a network already existing that shares standard operating procedures, methods, and then there is a very important part that is the data archiving, and then of course the data availability in the global data aggregators. And all of these, in some of these networks, these things exist, but they are not in all of them. So here we are trying right now to get an overview on the maturity of any of these data streams in terms of these critical components that we need. Like we need consistent methods, we need data management resources, we need data processing and data archiving. And that's not, that figure is not necessarily representing the state of the odd right now, but we are starting to get an overview. So we're working on this right now. And if you see that, like, let's say the dark green parts, they would be then when there is an international system that's already interoperable, existing, then we can kind of use this as a start component. And if it's light green, it would be like a national system that works very well, but it's only in one area or in one region. And so in that defines in a way where we have to put our focus in these use cases, that in a way they should stimulate everyone to do the right thing at the right place. And so in the end, we want, of course, everything to be dark green. But the most important thing is that we turn more dark green. If we get everything to be dark green, that's, I don't know, but that's not an important thing. We have everyone to get to move towards the dark green area, and then there is different things you have to do. Like, so if it's already there, the system, like, you would then focus on data products, while if you want to scale up a national system, you would look into interoperability and so on. So that is behind the ducks. We are trying to understand what needs to be done. And here you see just two examples from, to give you two examples, the invasive species management duck, that is the one that we are just kicking it off. So the consortium has met everyone involved, and we haven't revised everything yet. So I can only tell you what we think we will be doing, but it looks like, looking at the international trend, what is mostly demanded is knowledge for prevention before an invasion happens, and then once it happens, knowledge to do effective eradication, containment, and control. And for example, the IPBES report that was published a few years back on the invasive alien species issue said that just close collaboration, coordination across sectors and countries is important. So this spatial scaling is really important. And they also said interoperable information systems are the most important things. So what we are trying to do here is we are discussing a predictive system, something that will in the future maybe work like a biological weather forecast that would be based on either statistical or mechanistic modeling approaches, and then feed on very good data into these model systems. We are definitely interested in an early warning system, and here it turned out that DNA-based early warning systems are the most sensitive ones. So they will detect invasions or at the earliest possible stage. And citizen science is also very good data source for this one. And then there's also a discussion on a response system. So once the infection or the intrusion has happened, then you do exactly what do you need to do to allow a good eradication or containment or control. So this is just a few examples of how we're discussing this and turning the needs into some sort of use case. And it doesn't have to be one single use case, it can be several use cases under this theme, invasive species management. And I think that's enough to present, so I can stop it here.
Thank you very much, Matthias, for your nice talk, very informative. So I invite now the audience. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. And just as a reminder, at the end of the session, we will have an open discussion on international collaborations and network. Let's see. We have questions in the Q&A box. It's from Soho, and he or she, I'm sorry if I, so it's a very good methodology to identify marine mammal. How can we implement this kind of project in Benin coast?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we are now at the stage where we need to organize ourselves on a European. Our ambition first is to get everyone who works with this kind of methodology and has these kind of ambitions to get these actors together on a European level, and then we can learn, and a lot of things will happen on the state of like developing best practices together. And this is best practice for how to do the monitoring, but then in the next case, where do the data go? How do you do the management of the data? So one monitoring group can basically learn and take the same methods from the other, and then the data flows. Who will take care of the data? Where will the data end up? These things we are trying to build that up, and we think for these methods I mentioned, we have a critical mass in Europe where there is like several systems, and so we can work towards and build a strong community up for this, and then that will allow us for like even parties from outside Europe to just simply join, and will have it much easier to participate then.
Thank you, Matthias. I think that topic is really interesting because I know that SOP, like standard operational procedures, applied globally is a big challenge right now. So put together everybody in the same page and try to standardize the way that data is taken, it's a big challenge. And I guess that maybe groups that are working like outside the European region, they might have some standard operation procedures that could work for this project. So yeah, this interconnection, collaboration, and networking could be a good fit for this program. I think we have one more question. So Edna Dionisio says, it was really overwhelming project and very complex. Thank you for that. My question, is there a specific species in the ecological environment to be identified or include all marine species with no limitations?
Well, all marine species and no limitation, that would make it even more overwhelming and complex than you already think it is, Edna. But we think that's where we have, it's a use case. So the use case is not to do everything for everybody. It's just should kind of, number one, it should assemble a critical mass. And number two, it should give a good, inspiring example of how everybody else can do it and motivate everyone to do it in a coordinated and orchestrated fashion. So that's, I think, the short answer.
Thank you very much, Matthias. If anybody has more questions, please write it down and we will open the discussion session at the end and you can ask questions there. Thank you, Matthias. And I'm gonna move forward with our next presenter. She is Leen Vandepitte from the data center of Flanders Marine Institute in Belgium. She's gonna share with us the launching of a call for marine biodiversity monitoring data. She has a background on marine, she's a marine biologist, and she is working in a lot of different projects, but all related with database infrastructures, marine biodiversity database standards and formats. So she's part of the World Register of Marine Species, the European Ocean Biodiversity Information System. She also contributes to the Interim Register of Marine and Non-Marine Genera, and also for LifeWatch Species Information Backbone. So yeah, I wanna give a big welcome to Leen, and Leen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carol. I'll go a little bit more into detail on the call for marine biodiversity monitoring data, because this does seem to raise a number of questions. But if I can move my slides, let's start with this. About 10 to 20 years ago, this was a very common situation that scientists or projects collect data and they keep the data to themselves. They're not very keen of sharing. And what we basically want to accomplish within the DTO-BioFlow projects and the data call specifically is, it has been mentioned a couple of times already, to activate sleeping marine biodiversity data. And by activating, we mean that we want to establish pipelines to make sure that those data can flow to European initiatives. And first stage here, the DTO-BioFlow project, but linked to that also to the EMOTnet project and the ED2 infrastructure in general. And as Klaas has already pointed out, it's not necessarily a matter of not wanting to share their data, but right now it's sometimes a challenge, a technical challenge. So really making it possible for those data to flow. So that's what the main goal of the data call is. It has been launched October 31st, and the call is still open until January 17th. So if you have an interest, you can still apply for this until January 17th. And what is it about? So the open call, what can be requested is a maximum of 60,000 euros per application, with the conditions that for whatever data you're applying, you have the rights and the permissions to work with those data and to bring them into the public domain, by which we mean that you can bring them under a CC BY license publicly. So they can be shared with the DTO-BioFlow, they can be shared with EMOTnet and so on. The submission itself can only be done through the open call web form on the DTO-BioFlow website. So there's no other ways, no emails, no PDF documents or Word documents you need to send. Just use the web form that is available online, and we'll share the link later on in the chat. That's not a problem. So what exactly are we looking for? We're looking for marine biodiversity data that right now is not readily available in the public domain or that is not standardized. We're looking for taxon occurrences, so the very basic what, where, and when on a species observation, and preferably to have that basic information linked to additional measurements that are linked specifically to that species observation. So that can be abundance, biomass, length, weight measurements, but also abiotic measurements taken at the same time as when your biological sample was collected. We're also looking at both what we refer to as the classical data types, so just processing the samples that you have collected by hand and then putting that information out there somewhere. But we're also looking at the rather new biological data types, which can be, for example, the eDNA-based data, imagery-based data, tracking data. So data collection based on a more modern technologies. We're dealing both with monitoring and data series. We're looking thus at human versus machine observations. All of that kind of data is eligible for this data call. And to answer one of the questions that was raised earlier, since this is indeed European funding, the data largely needs to be collected within European marine waters. What are we aiming for with this call is basically to help reach the project, its overall goals. And that's three very major goals. So facilitate a sustained and a long-term ingestion and establish data flow. This was mentioned by Klaas earlier. So it's not the idea to have a one-time data ingestion into the project, but the goal is really to develop pipelines that can be sustainable beyond the duration of the project. It's about mobilizing marine biodiversity data. And it's also about filling important, already identified gaps in biodiversity data coverage. The identified gaps based on what we know so far, for example, from the European EMOTnet biology project. What are we also aiming for is that data have a standard format and have quality control measures on top of them, conform international standards. So specifically for DTO-BioFlow, that means that we are using Darwin Core as a data format, as an exchange format. And for quality control, we are looking at making sure that all your taxa are compatible or connected to the World Register of Marine Species, that your region information is linked to marine regions, that the measures that, or the measurements, sorry, that you've taken, all the things that you have collected are according to BODC vocabularies, and that overall both your data and your metadata complies with the FAIR principles. Now, just to give you an idea, what are the currently known gaps based on emotnet biology and aerobies? Geographically, this map seems very dense, seems very well covered, but we know that, for example, we're still dealing with gaps within the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. This, again, might seem very much covered, but keep in mind that this not necessarily covers all the functional groups that we are looking at. So we're looking at biodiversity in general, and for convenience, this is sometimes subdivided in specific groups. So we're looking at benthos birds, fish, mammals, plankton, reptiles, algae, and so on. And as you can see from the graph, we might be doing pretty good on benthos, but we're still lacking or having a big gap on some of the other functional groups. So any data related to any of those functional groups is a big support towards reaching the goals of DTO-BioFlow. The timeline, just to give you an idea, so you know what is coming. The application deadline, that's the most important date right now, is January 17th. And after we close the call, there will be an evaluation period with a committee will take up to February 8th. And then all the beneficiaries, so all the approved applications will be informed on this on February 12th. The project implementation, so which means the contract that you will have within this data call is for 1 year. So starting March next year and then ending by the end of February in 25. Payments will be arranged 50% at the start and 50% at the end. The end does mean successful realization of your proposed activities. So having the data flow set up and also having all the available information documented and available to the DTO-BioFlow project. There will be for all beneficiaries a mandatory workshop attendance that will be in April 2024. More details will follow on that later. The workshop will basically be a training you in how to use the standards, how to do quality control, and what the goals and the topics are that your data need to comply with within this call. So this will be a mandatory attendance. And there's also a number of reporting obligations so that within the DTO-BioFlow project, we can keep really good track of your progress. And we can also step in where needed. If you need extra assistance, if there are specific things that are not going as smoothly as we would hope for, then through these intermediate reports, we can get a good grip on that and we can assist in making sure that the goals of the contract are still met by the end of the contract. I might suspect that there's quite some questions on this. The first thing I'll do is in the chat, share the link to where the open data call information can be found. There's a lot of information there on who is eligible, who is not, what are the conditions, what are things that you need to take into account. And after you've gone through that, if there would still be any questions, we do have that one address, which is opencalls@dtobioflow.eu. Just send your questions there and we will pick them up as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Very informative. And yeah, of course, a lot of questions around that topic. I'm just reading here in the QA box. Yeah, I think this question was already answered by Lynn's presentation, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. It's Edna Dionisio asked, she says it's an exciting project. Her question is, who are qualified to apply for the project? I think, yeah, she said, thank you. And they're asking for the link for the application, which I already shared it in the chat, but I can share it again if it's necessary. And does anybody has additional questions? So I may have a question, Leen, for you. My question is, as you make it clear that for the moment the project is going to deal with data collected in European waters. So does this include also the countries in the Caribbean, for example?
Very good question. Within EMOTNet biology, we do look at that, but for now, for the call, you are going to have to check whether the country that you're putting in your application from is eligible or not from that perspective. This is a first call. I might not have mentioned that clearly enough. So this is a first call that we're launching. By the end of next year, a second call will be launched. And it might be that we kind of adapt and be flexible on the second call, depending on the questions and the feedback that we get on the first call. So it's definitely something that you can keep an eye on.
Yes, I will. Thank you very much, Leen. And so I am putting again in the chat the link for the call. There is all the information. There is a document in that link that describes the list of participating countries in Horizon Europe, which countries are eligible and which are the criteria for the participation. So all the details, it's in that link. Yeah, and Leen is also sharing it again. Thank you, Leen. Yeah, so the next thing we are gonna do now, and please, Jose or Joanna, just correct me if I'm wrong. We are gonna move forward to the next section of this session, and we are gonna open then the floor for a discussion on international collaboration and networks. We will have around 20 minutes for that. And the audience can interact, asking questions on the QI box, and also the panelists or the speakers can discuss between them or among them about any topic that comes up. So the floor is open for anybody who wants to ask a question. Okay, so somebody is asking here. Luliana Nikerus is asking, will there be open calls dedicated to models? I don't know.
Maybe I can answer that one. It's not really it's definitely not part of this first call. We might consider for the next call to open up a bit towards data products that could be generated and that could be of use in the framework of the DTO, but it all depends a bit on the input that we get during the first call, and the needs also from within the project, for example, for the demonstrator cases.
Yeah, because I am understanding that the project is now like in initial phase, so you need to still collect a lot of data.
Mm-hmm.
And then I assume that maybe in the near future, like another phase of the project could be like start modeling, right? To make the digital representation of the ecosystem. And regarding to that, earlier there was a question related to that, like, are you gonna collect only biodiversity data or also environmental data that are linked to those biodiversity occurrences, let's say? I don't know, anybody can answer. Any of you? Lynn, yeah.
If it's linked to each other, then we're very interested in getting the whole package, not just the biodiversity or the species observations, but anything that is directly linked to that observation can be part of the package and will be very much welcomed.
Thank you for the clarification, Lynn. So not only presence and absence, but also it's welcome to integrate data that includes the variables associated to those occurrences. Okay, so
maybe Anna, if I may, because yeah, the idea was that we also would discuss a bit international cooperation in this with this initiative, and I want to make it clear that within the project we have a specific task looking at that. There is basically, as part of Work Package 5, there is a campaign foreseen on international community building in support of the mission, but also the UN Decade of the of Ocean Science. Yeah, as part of this task, the people of DTO are very involved. DTO is a program under the UN Decade of Ocean Science, focusing on digital twins of the ocean, but also many other UN Decade programs and actions will be connected to from within the project. The Marine Life 2030, the Ocean Tracking Network, also OBON, the Ocean Biomolecular Observing Network, through EMOBON. And we are planning to organize an international workshop during the project with those key UN Ocean Decade international stakeholders. So that's maybe a good point in the future where this international community building and connections can take place. Also on that aspect, and maybe we did not make it clear enough in the presentations, but the data systems that we are working with, they're already embedded in global initiatives. And maybe Leen, you can say something more about the connection between EUROBIS and OBIS, for example.
Yeah, so EUROBIS, you can see that as the database, the infrastructure behind EMOTNet Biology, which is European, but EUROBIS is also part of the global OBIS network. So data that is made available within EUROBIS finds its way to OBIS. It also finds its way to GBIF. OBIS itself is also a UN Decade endorsed project, so there's very close links there with OBIS, with WORMS, and with other initiatives, with the Marine Life 2030 program, which Frank is responsible for. So there already is a lot of embedment in the international landscape, but anything that we might have missed or that might also contribute to this, of course, we'd very much like to hear about that.
So to make it clear, this call is, let's say, framed into ongoing monitoring programs. It's not for like designing a new monitoring programs. Okay, nice, good to know.
No, we are aiming to mobilize, to awaken existing data. So the call is not aimed at developing new data collection initiatives or new data protocols. That it's not. It's about existing data that is not yet easily available for the European and the international initiatives that deal with biodiversity data.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. That was really useful. So, yeah, I would like to ask to my support is there any questions from the YouTube channel coming up that I can ask here? Okay, so Regina Folarun Show, she wants to thank to all the presenters for the presentation. And her question is, how do we perfect international collaboration when our environment, demography, economy, and cultural characteristics are mismatched? Lynn, you wanna, go ahead.
A very first thought, talk to each other. Communicate. That's the very first starting point, I think. Make connections with people and see where that brings you. I think maybe Klaas or Matthias have some extra additional feedback on that one.
No,
Thank you, Lynn.
just to do state that it's very important to have this international collaboration. Actually, there is only one global ocean. We have different named oceans, but we're talking about one global ocean. So the need to understand each other is very high. So we should make the best effort there.
All right, so we are already at the top of the hour. Yeah, so I think we can wrap up the session. I would like to thank a lot to all the speakers. I think this topic is really interesting. I can understand that this is in an initial phase, and there are gonna be more open calls to come and more opportunities for everybody to participate. And I am really happy to have Lynn, Matthias, and Klaas here. Thank you for the attendance, the audience, for your questions, for staying here with us for an hour. And yeah, that's it from my side. Have a good day. Thank you very much.